The festive season is officially here, and if you're anything like me, this time of year it just seems impossible to resist all the new coloring books that come out. The gorgeous illustrations, the cozy themes, my colorist brain just wants them all. But December is already such an expensive month. Between gifts, food, social gatherings, travel, sometimes adding another coloring book or 10 to the cart just isn't feasible when you're trying to stay on a budget. If you can treat yourself to new coloring books, absolutely go for it. It is amazing to support the artists that you adore. But for those of you trying to save a little and buying every new Christmas book release isn't possible, the good news is that you don't actually need a new coloring book to enjoy some festive coloring. One of the best and completely free ways to join in on the holiday fun is to grab a random book in your collection, pick a page, and transform it into something amazingly Christmassy. And you get to enjoy some festive coloring without blowing your December budget. So in today's video, I'm going to show you how to do exactly that. I'll be taking one of the least Christmassy books in my collection and turning it into a bit of a festive extravaganza step by step. No new books, no added cost, and honestly, it's just a really fun challenge to take on as well. So without further ado, let's get into some festive coloring. Now, when it came to choosing which book I would be coloring in this video, I actually decided to let you choose. I put 3 options up on my Instagram stories as well as here on my YouTube community tab. Those 3 options were Spooky Coloring Adventures of a Witch Cat by Sarah Shefchik, Tales from the Witch's Cottage by Hannah Carlzon, and Imagimorphia by Kerby Rosanes. And unsurprisingly, the winner was Imagimorphia. You guys always want to see me color Kerby's work, and today you are getting your wish. Now, the first step to transforming a normal page into a festive masterpiece is choosing an illustration that's kind of reminiscent of the holiday season. And funnily enough, I didn't realize it when I added Imagimorphia to the poll, but there's kind of a Christmassy illustration in this book already. At first glance, it doesn't scream Christmas, but when you look a little closer, there are so many festive elements tucked into the illustration. And this really was a perfect example of not knowing that there may be a Christmas page hiding in your non-Christmas coloring books without you even realizing it. Some other options I did consider in Imagimorphia. I considered this train double page spread. This gives me huge Hogwarts Express vibes. I don't know what it is, but the Harry Potter series always makes me feel a little bit festive. The second illustration I thought about was this horse-drawn carriage spread. I feel like you could totally color this to suggest Santa's sleigh flying across the sky with his reindeer. But honestly, I was not in the mood to tackle a double page spread. I mean, I'm never really in the mood for that. So instead, the page I decided to transform is this cuckoo clock illustration. Out of the 3 options I just showed you, this is probably the least festive option. But there is something about a clock that gives me cozy holiday energy. And I also loved that there was some background space to play with, so I could add my own little festive details. Step number 2 is then choosing your color palette. Honestly, I think this might be one of the most pivotal decisions you can make when trying to take a normal coloring page and make it look festive. Because I don't know about you, but the moment I see red and green paired together in a color palette, my brain immediately goes to Christmas. Now, there are so many ways to find holiday-inspired palettes. Pinterest is always a great option. You could even pull colors from your favorite Christmas ornaments or decorations. Or if you have the first volume of the updated Sarah Renee Clark color cubes, there's actually an entire category in this cube that is dedicated to the Christmas season with 25 different festive palettes. This is the tool I ended up using to choose my color palette for the page in Imagimorphia imagimorphia. So I flipped through the Christmas season cards, and the two palettes I ultimately chose were card 224 for that classic stereotypical Christmas look, and card 202 for a softer, less obvious festive palette. And for some reason this year, I've really been loving red and pink together for my Christmas decorations. So that definitely played a part in choosing these two palettes. Step number 3 is then drawing in your own festive additions. This could be absolutely anything you like. Stars, candy canes, bows, whatever tickles your fancy. But I find one of the easiest elements to add, especially if you're not super confident with your drawing skills, is Christmas baubles. They're literally just circles, so as long as you have some sort of circular stencil at your disposal, you're pretty much good to go. So obviously you can see that's what I did here. And depending on your coloring page, you might want to hang the baubles off specific elements in the illustration. But because this particular book of Kerby Rosanes already has lots of random objects floating around, I decided to let my Christmas baubles float around as well. It suited the vibe. I also wanted to make sure that I filmed a little visual demonstration of how I color Christmas baubles, because they are everywhere at this time of year, and yeah, I do always get asked that. I keep it super duper simple. I choose one highlight point, I use a 3 color combination, and then I come in with my white Prismacolor to smooth everything together, make it blend nicely, and also emphasize that bright highlight point. The fourth step I'd highly recommend is adding a bit of a candy cane striped pattern to multiple elements within the illustration. I find that as soon as you add those iconic red and white stripes to the page, the festive energy really starts to take shape. Where you place the stripes is really dependent on the illustration you're working with. If there's an element with a lot of space, you can add that striped pattern in there yourself. But for this page in Imagimorphia, Kerby already had quite a few striped patterns built into the artwork, so I just used those to my advantage and colored them red and white. I'm still learning how to represent white on a coloring page while keeping some shading and dimension, but I don't think I did too shabby of a job here. However, I did notice that some of Kerby's stripe patterns, they didn't actually line up when objects overlapped. So the stripes would look totally different on the other side of the shape. I know that's not making sense what I just said, but you did probably see me erase sections of my red pencil work because it just wasn't matching up. I had to kind of just make it make sense the best I could. And if you're not super confident with drawing your own stripes and there are no stripes already present within the illustration, you can just color existing patterns on the page in red and white instead. So I decided to show that here inside the clock. There's this funky little pattern, and yeah, colored it red and white as well. It still gives that subtle candy cane energy, and I just focused my shading around the outer edges of this donut-like shape, which helped create a kind of cool tubular dimension. Step number 5 is then to color some elements in a way that gives them the illusion of being made out of metal. At Christmas time, I just think we see so many metal objects. So adding even a small hint of metal to your coloring page really does help elevate the holiday vibes. I also apologize for how many times you're going to hear me say vibes and energy in this video, but it's the only descriptor I can think of. Now, I was lucky with this cuckoo clock illustration because there were plenty of elements that I could naturally interpret as metal. I started with the clock face and decided to color it gold since that worked perfectly with the palettes I had chosen. One of my goals for 2026 is to definitely improve my metal coloring. So this is me dipping my toes into starting that journey at the end of 2025. Something I've noticed a lot of people do when coloring clock faces or just circular objects in general, like cogwheels, they add 3 intentional points of shading around around the circle to kind of, I guess, create that look of reflective metal. So you'll see I applied that approach here on the clock face, and for the clock hands I shaded wherever the shape narrowed, because that's where the deeper shadows would naturally fall. And yeah, I just found these two shading methods to really help give my metals a more realistic appearance on the page. I then decided that the clock face wasn't quite enough gold for me, so I then added some more within the illustration. I colored the remaining sections of the blimps and hot air balloons using the same gold color combination I just had, as well as the two dragons on the page, because who doesn't love a gold dragon? It kind of makes me think of a gold dragon ornament that you might hang on your Christmas tree. And actually, whilst we're on the subject of that, sometimes giving your illustration some sort of festive story really helps with your choices throughout the coloring process. For this page, I feel like you could give it the story of whenever the clock strikes a certain time, then all of a sudden these random Christmas ornaments start bursting out of it. Maybe they magically disappear from people's Christmas trees all around the world and just reappear inside this clock. I know, it's a little bit random, but it's a story that I thought of, which, yeah, just helped me make my coloring choices. Once I had all the metallic elements finished, I then just moved on to coloring the rest of the page using the color cube cards I'd pulled. And this is what the page was looking like once I'd completed all the colored pencil work I wanted to do. As per usual, I didn't stick to my chosen palettes perfectly, but I think it's reminiscent of them. I pretty much always treat my chosen color palettes as inspiration rather than a strict set of rules. But yeah, once we had all the major coloring of the illustration done, it was time to move on to the sixth step in the transformation process: creating a festive background. Now, depending on the page you're coloring and the medium you plan on using for your background, you might want to tackle the festive background a lot earlier in this 8-step process I'm sharing with you. The steps that I'm sharing don't have to be followed in the exact order that I'm telling you them. I simply chose to do the background at this point just because I didn't know what I wanted my background to be at first. Just for some inspiration, I do want to quickly show you a page that I completed recently in Hannah Carlson's Merry Christmas, because this background was so easy to do. All I used was red and white acrylic markers to create these diagonal candy cane-like stripes on the page, and it immediately made the page feel so much more festive. So yeah, that's a really great option there if you're looking for a really simple background technique that is still super effective. However, I knew those bold stripes were probably going to be a little bit too much for this Kerby rosanes illustration. So instead, I decided to take inspiration from peppermint swirl candies and create a kind of fun pinky red swirl pattern behind the foreground. To draw in the swirls, I used just one Derwent Inktense pencil. I went with a red one, but because I drew the lines in quite lightly, it ended up looking more like a pastel pink once the pigment was activated. And yes, to activate the Inktense, I used my thinnest Arteza water brush and blended it out quite roughly. I wasn't aiming for perfectly clean swirl edges. I wanted a more organic, slightly messy, faded out look, and yeah, some swirls came out better than others. One thing I did notice with this paper, if I let too much water flow from the brush, the pigment went a bit granulated and patchy on the page. But when I kept the water flow to a minimum, the Inktense activated really nicely. This is actually only my second time ever coloring a Kerby rosanes illustration, and both times I did use some water-soluble mediums on the page, and this paper handled it pretty well as long as I left some drying time between my water-soluble layers. I haven't had any major bleed-through issues, just a little ghosting when I used too much water and very minimal paper warping too. To build a bit more depth, I went in with a second Inktense layer, this time pulling pigment directly from the pencil with my brush and concentrating it closer to the illustration. That helped create a slightly stronger saturation near the edges of the foreground and gave the whole piece a subtle inverse vignette effect. And then of course I had to add some white acrylic marker dots to the background. I felt like the swirls needed a little bit more visual texture, and yeah, acrylic dots are perfect for that. I did also add some little stars and snowflakes, however you want to interpret them, which gave the background a subtle snowy festive vibe too. I'm not gonna lie, once I finished all the activating of the Inktense, I realized the background kind of looked like a chaotic, multi-armed octopus, and now I can't unsee it. I do wonder whether doing maybe a soft pastel layer before adding the swirls might have helped make it look less octopus-like, but overall I don't think it turned out too terribly. I don't know why I said it like that. Moving on. Step number 7 is then the glitter and shine step. This is always such a fun one. I personally feel like every Christmas illustration needs a bit of sparkle. Christmas itself is such a magical, glowy, twinkly time of year, so adding that shine really brings the page to life. For any of the tiny elements I chose not to shade with my Prismacolors. I went in with my Pentel Hybrid Dual Metallic Gel Pen in the gold shade, and I used it to color, yeah, all those tiny details, especially the little ghost-like characters that Kerby Rosanes seems to include in pretty much every page in Imagimorphia. I did also add some more dots to the background swirls with a pink glitter gel pen. This is the Uniball Signo Sparkling Gel Pen. Yet again, just to give the background even more visual interest and a few extra moments of shine. I did decide to experiment a bit though and go over the line work of the ghost characters with a gold metallic acrylic marker. I'm still not sure if that was the right choice. It doesn't look horrendous. Actually, when I showed the finished page to Jackson, he thought I had drawn in those little characters myself. Whether that's a good thing or not, I'm not entirely sure, but it was an interesting viewpoint from him. I doubt you can see how glittery all these elements are on camera. Cameras absolutely hate picking up glitter for some reason, but in real life they sparkle so beautifully and it makes my inner child very, very happy. And then the 8th and final step in my Christmasifying process is actually very similar to step number 3, adding your own festive elements, but this time we're doing it with acrylic markers. These are the details that you want to add on top of your colored pencil work. And there are so many things you could add to your page with acrylic markers. Off the top of my head, you could add, yes, yet again, you could add candy canes, you could add stars and snowflakes. If you wanted to take it a step further, you could draw in some ribbons or bows. But for this page of mine, I decided to add in some Christmas lights and some cute little Santa hats. For the Christmas lights, I added them to 2 different spots of the cuckoo clock. I completely forgot to hit record for the first part. Classic me, but I used my Ohuhu fine line drawing pen to draw in what I suppose you could call the cord of the Christmas lights. Then I went in with a pale yellow acrylic brush marker to place down the glow of each light. If the acrylic marker came out a bit opaque, I just dabbed it with my finger to soften it, and then after that I used a fine-tipped acrylic marker with a bit more opacity than the brush tip to dot in the centers of the lights themselves. I was basically trying to create a little soft glow effect, and I think it turned out fairly effective. And then I added in those Santa hats with my acrylic markers as well. I used fine-tipped markers here again and ended up adding 4 tiny little Santa hats onto the page. 2 on the birds and 2 on those little gold glittery ghost characters, and yeah, I thought it looked so cute. I went back and forth about whether I should try adding some shading and depth to the Santa hats, but I think leaving them flat was the right call. It helped them stand out a little bit more, and because the gel pen characters don't have any shading either, I feel like it brought everything together on the page a little bit more cohesively. And then I did go off camera one more time to just add in my usual acrylic marker highlights that I usually do to my pages, mainly to the dragons and the birds, just to give them a little bit more, dimension, interest, all those words. And then the page was finally complete. I cannot tell you how much I enjoyed the Christmas-ifying of this illustration. Constantly thinking about the different Christmas elements I could add to the page, it really got me into the holiday spirit. And I do just want to reiterate what I said in the intro. This video is not saying that you should never buy a Christmas coloring book again. I love supporting my favorite artists whenever I have the means to, and I know all of you do as well. I just wanted to make this video to show you that if you're on a budget, if you're feeling overwhelmed by your collection, which is definitely me at the moment, you can still thoroughly enjoy some festive coloring with what you have on hand. Sometimes it just takes a little bit of creativity. And even putting all those reasons aside, this was just such a fun challenge to do. So I'm going to challenge you to choose one of the least festive books in your collection and Christmasify a page in it this December. And if you also made it all the way to the end of this video, let me know by leaving a Santa emoji in the comments. As per usual, if you'd like to support the channel further and get 3 extra videos from me every month, I'll have my Patreon linked in the description. You can even gift Patreon memberships now, so maybe that's something you could put on your Christmas wish list this year. Until next time, happy coloring, friends. Have a good day, have a good life, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!